pandemic in BC. However, I cannot emphasize strongly enough how much care each of us at CC must take to ensure that we remain safe. I urge you, therefore, to abide by any safety restrictions that your teachers might impose on you, however irksome they may be, or that you might find them, and in particular the rule that you are to wear a mask at all times in the building. We trust you to conduct yourself always with the utmost regard for your own and each other's safety. Thank you, and now your class is awake. Have a great day.
Thank you, overly cheerful Zerlinda. So we got 2, 3, 4. Hey, Sophie. Here we go, come on in. Come on in. Come on in. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Okay, ready people? Ready to go? Sophie, you ready? All right, so, okay, good morning everyone. Welcome to, I'm going to take this off just for a minute or two here. Welcome to History 12. My name is Mike Metcalf. If you don't already know that, you can call me Mike, or you can call me Mr. Mike, or you can call me Mr. Metcalf. That feels a little formal to me, but that's okay. Whatever you feel comfortable with. So just before we dive into the class, this is how it will work. But I'll need your eyes up here. Eyes up here. Okay? So what's happening here is that I'm streaming this class live to YouTube. And so there's a few students who are online. They're either in quarantine or they're in their home country. And so they're going to be kind of watching this class online. And so everything that people can see online is what you can see on the screen here. And so people online can hear me, but they won't really be able to hear you. So you can feel comfortable asking questions or answering or saying whatever you want in here, and it will not be broadcast to the entire internet. People cannot hear you, but I will summarize what you say so that people online can hear it as well. Okay, so relax, and of course they can't see you either. Maybe at some point I'll turn the camera around, but for now they can't see you, they can't really hear you, but I can go between you. What else? Okay, so normally what I do is I say hi to people who are online. So Ben is here. Good morning again, Ben. We talked this morning already. And Unati is here. Good morning to you. Let's just kind of dive in and talk about this class, okay? So, what I'm going to do is What I'm going to do is I'm going to basically walk through the syllabus, the sort of plan for this course. And the syllabus itself, the document, is in Microsoft. No, it's not. It's in Student Portal under Course Documents, and so you'll be able to review it later. But I've got basically all the important things in my slides here on the screen. So, who's taken history before? No history at all? Nobody's ever taken any history of anything? Yeah. What kind of historical stuff did you study before? So Ben has. Ben, what did you study? Ooh, okay. I'm going to warn you. It's going to be a very, very long term if nobody says anything in here. World War One. Okay. The whole war. Yeah. What was that like?
It's like back that time Germany has Germany engaged the war first, and then there's the two. Is that Axis and Iran?
Yep.
And then Germany invaded Italy, on Germany, and then the other side is France and England.
Yep.
And then finally Germany got defeated, and then they have signed some treaties, and then
Yeah.
something like that.
Pretty much. Yeah. That's the 30-second summary of World War One. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah. So we studied that. Ben here says he studied World War II and how it affected Singapore. I'll just take a second to point that out. That's very interesting because, we often think of history as, a bunch of facts, a bunch of dates, a bunch of people's names, and part of that is true. That's part of what it is. But, history is a story, right? And stories have to be told from a certain perspective, right? If you watch a movie or a television show, if you read a book or a graphic novel, or even play a sort of a multiplayer role player video game, the story is always told from a perspective, right? It's always told from someone's point of view. And history is really no different in that regard. History is a story told from a certain point of view. And so Ben here will have heard the story of World War II, but maybe from a South Pacific or from a Singaporean perspective, right? But people in Europe or the United States or Germany or France, they might have a slightly different perspective on what that history was about, right? And so right off the bat, it's important for us to remember that, history can be different things to different people, right? There are many different versions of history, and all are true. Well, not all are true. Some are some are not true. All are true, but again, from a certain perspective, right? They teach us things because they tell us things, through the eyes of certain people. And Unati here, she's studied World War I and World War II. Yeah, and so we're going to talk about those things as well, kind of in some more general ways. But hopefully we can pull out some lessons from that history, and we can gain some experience working with some kind of historical thinking skills, if you will. So what else? World War I, World War II. Anyone else study the history of anything else? What about the history of your home country? Did anyone study that? Yeah. Japan and when Japan invaded China. Yeah, that's an important historical event, right? Particularly for the Chinese, right? So that's, yeah, people know about that. Very true. What else? Other and China invaded Vietnam, right? So obviously very important to the Vietnamese, right? They probably remember that, right? What else? What's that? Okay, hold on, guys. What?
Like the return of Hong Kong.
Right, the return of Hong Kong. Yeah.
And then it's going to happen in 1997.
Yeah.
And England didn't correct to return Hong Kong.
Yeah. Yeah. So Hong Kong has kind of a long history of its own, right? Being sort of a part of China, and then under British Empire, and then sort of returned, and supposedly independent, but it's kind of that's in flux right now, in transition, and we don't know what's going to happen there. So there's a history there as well. History of anything else? No? I know when I was a kid, good morning. When I was a kid, of course, we studied the history of Canada, right? We all had to know how Canada was formed, and we had the British and the French, and we had indigenous people here, and it's a very interesting but not a very long history, right? Because Canada's only 150, what's it going to be this year? 154 years old. We're a very young country, right? We're a baby country, if you will. But yeah, one of the things that we'll talk about in this course is not only some of the events that have happened in the 20th century, but we'll try to look at these from different perspectives, and we'll try to understand the sort of differences in how we can observe these historical events, right? What was I going to say? It'll come back to me. So the 20th century is amazing, okay? So basically looking at, we'll start around when World War II starts in around 1914, and I'll try to carry us through all the way to the end of the 1990s, okay? So we'll try to cover that whole space. Now, covering that entire span of time is ridiculous in 13 weeks, right? So much has happened. It's a big world. There's no way we can really cover it in any sort of meaningful detail, but we'll try to get some of the broader ideas of what's happened, and sort of try to understand how the world that we live in today was created by the world of the 20th century. And for those of you who have studied a little bit about this period of history, it's an exciting time. Like, some of the things that happened in the 20th century, I don't think anything like those things have happened in my lifetime. Like, they're some of the events are just so big and so, they sort of change the course of history that, like, I don't know, I almost can't compare anything that's happened in the 20th century to anything that is currently happening, because it's such an eventful period. But we'll see that. We'll talk a little bit about primary and secondary sources. We'll learn what those are and how to kind of think about them and how to use them. Oops. And we'll talk a little bit about bias. Has anyone heard about bias?
Yeah.
What's bias?
Just like different connotations, and then the like stereotype, I guess.
Not quite stereotype, but you're right in saying that. Yeah, it's kind of your bias is kind of like what you are, things that you normally think or believe, right? Or things that you normally prefer, right? Those will affect how you see things, right? So we'll talk a little bit about bias. Bias is not necessarily a bad thing, and I don't think it's something that, I almost don't think it's something that can be avoided. Everyone is biased in some way, right? Depending on what we like and what we don't like and where we come from and who we are. We're all going to see things in a slightly different way, and that's okay. As long as we can recognize what people's biases are and what our own biases are. But again, we'll talk about that as we go forward. It's also interesting to think about the past in the context of the present, right? To see how things have happened in the past, and again, can we, have you ever heard this before? This idea like, oh, we study history so we can learn lessons from the past. You ever heard that one? Yeah. Do you think that's true? Do you think we learn though? No, we don't. Which is ironic, right? Because you would think, the whole reason of studying history is so we can learn, but often it seems like we make similar mistakes over and over again, right? But, even if that's true, it doesn't mean we should stop studying, right? There are things to learn, right? And so we can think about the future by examining and understanding the past, right? And again, I think this is important for you guys because your world is the world of the future, right? All of you will probably live until you're 120 years old, so you're medical science and so forth. You have 100 more years, right? So you have a lot of future ahead of you, and you're going to see and experience a lot of things, and you're going to live in a world that I cannot imagine, right? And maybe you cannot imagine. And so really it's impossible to predict the future. It's impossible to know what it will be like. But looking at the past can help us sort of imagine what might be possible, right? But again, I think it's difficult to understand the present, and it's difficult to think about the future without understanding the past, right? You can't understand what Canada is now unless you know where Canada comes from, unless you know what happened to Canada, in the past 200 years. And if you don't really know anything about that, it's kind of tough to know what this country is, right? And I think that's true of global history as well. It's tough to understand the world that we live in now unless you understand the world that we did live in, right, in the past. And so, yeah, we'll... Sorry, my nose is itchy. So we'll... Yeah, so we'll try and do this, right? We'll try and imagine and understand the world of the past in order to think about the world of the present and the future. There's a textbook for this course, and for those of you who are in person here, I have actual copies for you. And so in the next day I think they're across the street. In the next day or so, I'm going to try and get someone to bring them over so I can give you a book, okay? For those of you who are online, of course, you won't have it. And so I will I have scans of some pages and I'll post them for you so that you can read, okay? So the book will look like this for those of you who are in class, and so I'll get that to you in the next couple days. For those of you online, you'll be able to read it as well, so don't panic, everything is under control. There'll also be some other things from time to time. I have some articles that are interesting to read. I have a few documentaries that are interesting to watch. And so I'll kind of work those in as well, okay? So there'll be some textbook stuff, there'll be some reading, there'll be some videos, all kinds of different things that will allow us to explore and talk about what's happened in the past. And again, well, I'll talk about that in a second. Right, so I'm going to get you the textbook. Everything that this is actually a little bit out of date here. Everything that I provide to you, I will put onto either Student Portal or onto Microsoft Teams. So the lecture slides here that you see, I will post on Microsoft Teams. Any readings and things I will post for you in Microsoft Teams. And all of our classes are recorded on YouTube. So everything is kind of curated or stored for you to see later, okay? There are some skills that we are supposed to be building in this class. So the purpose of this class is to learn about history, right? That's part of what it's about. But the other part of what it's about is developing some writing and analytical and thinking skills, okay? So these are skills that you find more in the social sciences, so not really in math and physics and things, but more in social sciences. And really what it is, in a nutshell, it's about learning to ask questions, learning to analyze data, and learning to sort of take that data and say something new with it. Say something that is actually your own. So we won't look at all of these skills kind of in depth. Some of them are a little easier to grasp than others. But as you can see here in the first one, I have, the skills to ask questions. The gateway to all knowledge is asking questions, right? And the better questions you ask, the more likely you will find out something new, right? And this works for science, it works for academics, it works for creative things. If you are a writer or a painter or a musician, a lot of very interesting things come out of the right question, right? What's it like for this person? Or what would happen if this were the case? Or why is this the way it is, right? These questions kind of spur people to do research, to do investigations, to create some piece of art. The right question is really what drives knowledge, right? It's not really about answers, it's about questions. And so I encourage you as this course goes on to think up really good questions, right? The better a question you can ask, that's the gateway to knowledge, right? Even if you don't have the answer, or if I don't have the answer, or if no one has the answer, especially if no one has the answer, that's probably a good question, right? So we'll try and talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. We'll talk a little bit about historical significance. This is important because, again, history is full of, if you look at the history of the 20th century, the history of the 20th century is everything that happened in the 20th century to everyone for the entire 100-year period, right? And that's a huge amount of stuff. That's an impossible amount of events. But are they all significant? Well, again, it depends on who you ask, right? Is the beginning of World War II significant? No? Is it important? Is that an important event? Yeah, hugely important event, right? What about my birth, the day of my birth? Is that an important event? It's important to my parents, right? It's important to me, but is it important to the world as a whole? Not so much, right? So again, significance has to do with what story you're telling, right? If you're telling the story of 20th century history, yeah, World War II, totally significant. My birth, not so much. But if you're telling the story of me or my family, you'll find out that my birth is actually a very significant event, or a more significant event, right? World War II doesn't really factor into my family's story at all. So again, the significance of events depends on which story you're telling, right? But we'll get to that. We'll look at different types of historical evidence, right, and talk about what we can learn from historical evidence and what we're not able to, right? Some things we know in great detail, others not so much, right? It depends on what evidence is available. We'll talk a little bit about continuity and change, how things stay the same and how things change, but we'll get to that. That's kind of an easy one, actually. Same thing with cause and consequence. I think all of us have a pretty good grasp of, when certain things happen, there are consequences for them. That's not too difficult to understand, I think. We'll talk a little bit about perspective, right? So how people were interpreting different historical events, right? Either after they happened or even while they were happening, right? Different people are going to see things differently, right? Maybe the most easy thing is that, we know that the Allies win the war in World War II. Sorry, spoiler alert, people. They win World War II, but the Germans might not feel the same as the Western world did about that, right? That victory was huge for the Allies, for Britain, for France, for the US, for Canada. But what's it like to be on the other side, right? What's it like to be on the losing side of that engagement, right? That's a different perspective, and we'll try and deal with that. And the last one we'll talk about, which, I think there's some room for this one, but how do we make reasoned ethical judgments? If we have to make a decision, how do we come to one that is morally and ethically right? That takes a set of skills, right? So we'll talk about that. There's also these core competencies in the curriculum, which are communication. So how do we communicate with each other, right? How do we engage with each other? We'll talk about that. I'll spend a decent amount of time talking about critical thinking and how we use it and how it works, because I think it is an important skill for everyone to learn, particularly university students or university, aligned students. And I think it's something that a lot of people don't do very well. And so I think it's something we should spend some time on. And the last one is sort of a personal social competency. So thinking about how who you are and how you go about your life and how others go about their lives. We'll talk about a bit of that as well. As I'm sure people wanted to know, this is how I will evaluate you. I've changed it up a little bit from last term. So I'll have 10% of your grade will come from attendance. So I'll take your attendance here, whether you come to class or not, but of course I'm sure you'll all come to class, so I don't have to worry about that. If you're an online student, really the only way I can tell that you are present and involved is when you're participating in the live chat here. So here we've just got Ben and Unati and Tifshin here, and so I can see that, Elizabeth's here too, and so I can see that they have, they've participated in the chat here. I can see them, and I know that they're here and they're engaged, right? Right, so attendance and participation and engagement is part of that. Assignments, so I'll have some assignments for you to do throughout the course of the term. Probably, I'm thinking around 4 or 5. but I don't have them all perfectly planned out because I'm doing something a little different than last term. So I'll let you know what those look like when I'm ready to give them to you. I'll probably give them to you through Microsoft Teams, and you'll hand them in that way. But again, we can deal with that a little bit later. We'll have some quizzes. We'll have 5 of them. If you're in class, they'll be short answer written quizzes, so they won't be very long. If you're online, I'll do an oral quiz with you. So we'll just set aside a time, and we'll have a video conference, and we'll just, I'll ask you a couple of questions. You can tell me what you know. We can talk about it, and then that'll be your quiz. So it's a little different depending on whether you're in class or whether you're online, but it's the best I can do to kind of, balance things out. And it allows me to talk to the people online because, of course, you're all sitting here in class and I can easily talk to you, but online people, I can't see them, so it's gives me a chance to do that. And then there'll be a final assignment as well. I have an idea about what I would like to do, but it's not quite still developing in my head, so I'll let you know a little bit more about that later, probably toward the end of the course. It's also probably worth mentioning that I won't have a final exam for this class, so your grade will come just from assignments and quizzes and the final assignment. Okay, so no final exam. I don't know if that's a good thing for you, or I don't know if that makes you happy or sad, but that's what we'll do. Okay, maybe happy. Happy? Yeah. Final exams are tough, right? Because you've only got one chance to do it, and if you're a little bit off that day, or I don't know. Never mind. We don't have to talk about that. Right. So I do expect you to be here every day. I know you guys don't have another job. This is your job, so you should be here. If you miss a quiz or an exam, this is a little bit out of date. I don't need a doctor's note, but you do need to email Deborah or Maria, right? If you are going to be absent for a reason, or particularly if you're not feeling well, right? Because we can't have people coming in sick, right? We still have lots of COVID floating around out there. So again, if you're not feeling well, do not come into school, and let Deborah and Maria know, and we'll go from there. Okay. We'll talk a little bit about this more later, the idea of academic honesty and plagiarism and cheating. Basically, it's an important part of a row on the left there. You guys all with me? Hello? You with me? Okay. So academic honesty is an important part of how academics work, right? And the reason is that in order to do anything and to sort of contribute to knowledge, we have to share, right? Imagine if what could I invent? I don't know, maybe I could cure COVID, right? Maybe I'm Pfizer, right? Maybe I'm Pfizer and I've invented a vaccine to cure COVID. But if I don't share it with anyone, then it doesn't do any good, right? So when people discover things, when they learn things, they have to share them with the community. That's the only way and then other people can sort of build on that work and do better and better things. If people don't share what they've discovered and what they've learned, then knowledge doesn't really advance, right? And so we encourage people to share what they've done by thanking them, by crediting them, right? By giving them a little, hey, thanks for that, right? It's almost like, my example is like tagging people in Instagram, right? You have a photo of you and your friends and you tag them, or some people tag them, and you're acknowledging that they're there, right? And scientists like to be acknowledged, right? They like people to say thank you when they have, when they've used something they've created. So because of that, academic institutions are very sticky about cheating, about submitting work that's not your own. So don't do it. I much prefer to read your work rather than the work of someone else. We'll talk more about that later. I'll help you out with that, but it's bad. Don't do it. In the syllabus, there's a classroom code of conduct. I won't go through it all because you're all very well behaved and we don't have to worry about that. The only things I will say is that if you'd like to eat in here, you may. Just don't make a mess, and if you make a mess, you have to clean it up. And please, nothing too smelly, just in case. But we're all very busy, and so if you need to eat in here, that's fine. What's going to be difficult is the technology thing, right? Because phones and laptops are super distracting, right? But especially in the way that we're doing class now, we kind of need them in front of us. And so what would be really helpful for me, even though I know you've probably got your computers open and maybe you're looking at the screen in more detail, keep your eyes up here a little bit so I know that you are with me and paying attention and you're not, like watching YouTube videos or movies or something like that. That would really help me out, because we can't, I can't really say no, there's no technology in the classroom. We can't do that, but I do need you to be engaged and paying attention. So it's a little tricky, but we'll work through it, okay? Yes, you all have your own email addresses, as I'm sure you know, although it seems like Teams is becoming a more common way to message people. So keep an eye on your email, but also keep an eye on your Microsoft Teams, because people can post there. And I should mention in our I'll mention that later. So watch your email, watch your Teams, just so that you're up to date on what's going on. From time to time, we'll have fire drills or earthquake drills or things like that. I'll tell you about them when we get to them, so they're no big deal. I'm just mentioning them now. Right. And last thing. I did this at a seminar I went to, and it was kind of fun and interesting. And so what I would like you to do is to talk to someone nearby you, sort of beside or in front or behind or wherever, and tell them, introduce yourself, and then tell them the story of your name, right? So we all have a name, and that name was either given to us or chosen for a reason, right? So maybe your name means something. Maybe your parents gave it to you for a particular reason. Maybe, what is the story of your name? Where does it come from? Does it mean anything? Why did your parents give it to you? If you chose your name, why did you choose this particular name? What's the story, okay? So what I'll do, and I'll share mine too, just so it's not just you. I'll just put a few minutes on the clock here, because I can do that, and talk to someone around you and introduce yourself and tell them the story of your name and maybe where you're from. And for online people, I'm just going to restart the counter again here. For online people, because you're typing it in, just share the things that you feel comfortable sharing, okay? So if you don't want to share too much detail, then don't do it. I'm not forcing you to, but just share what you feel comfortable sharing, okay? And so let's take a few minutes, talk about it, and then we'll share as a group, okay? Okay. Ready, people? 3 minutes? All right. Does anyone want to start?
I can start.
Cool.
So I was saying basically I have two legal names. So Sophie is also my actual name. My dad he just chose that in the kind of wisdom.
Okay.
And my given name is Anne, which also means like peace and quiet. But because in Vietnamese, like people usually choose a name that has a meaning, so that's what they want their kids to be named for.
Oh,
Yeah.
did it work?
No.
In your defense, Sophie, I don't think there's any kids that give you peace and quiet. So your parents were, I think, overly optimistic. But but that's cool. That's cool. Okay, anyone else want to go? Yeah.
So my name is Mark, and I'm from Hong Kong.
Yep.
So basically, I chose my own name, Mark, because I don't have an English name before I attend to study primary school.
Right.
So a teacher just asked me to you need to choose your own English name. Oh, I said okay, Mark.
All right.
Yeah.
How does I've often wanted to ask this because lots of students from Southeast Asia will choose English names, and what's your feeling on that? Like, do you think, oh, it's cool that I get to choose this name, or do you feel like, ugh, like why do I have to choose an English name just so people can pronounce it, or Western people?
It's normal to choose our own name in Hong Kong. It's like that, and they will get ruled by England.
Yeah.
So in English class, we need to talk English, and then we need to actually say their English name. So I'm fine with naming an English name instead of Chinese name. So that's fine.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Well, nice to meet you, Mark. Glad you're here. I'm gonna go to Ben here because Ben's got Ben was named after Saint Benedict, as many people with Christian backgrounds are. They often get named after saints. he's Indonesian, and he's lived in Singapore all his life, and so I assume that's where. Or no, Ben is here, but he will be in class in a couple of days, I think. Anyway. Oh, and Shania is here, a former student of mine. Hi, Shania. Nice to see you. Let me see. Okay. Do you want me to go? Should I go next? Okay. So I'm just gonna take this off for a second. Okay. My name came from, my mom gave me my name, so my full name is Michael, another biblical name, which probably makes sense because my mom's family was very Catholic, and so I think it came from there. But it also came from, my mom had some older sisters, and her oldest sister, when my mom was younger, my mom's oldest sister was dating this guy named Mike, and I never thought about this until now either, but Mike was actually a teacher, strangely enough, and my mom thought he was just so handsome and so dreamy, and so she thought he was just the greatest. And so yeah, so when I was born years and years later, my mom's sister and Mike got married, so he's actually my uncle technically, but yeah, so when I was born, that's the name that she chose for me, which now that I kind of think of it, isn't that weird? Because like normally like boys are named after their father, right? But I'm named after this like other guy that my mom had a crush on as a teenager. So I don't know if that's weird or not. Is that weird? Is it a little weird? A little weird? Okay. That's the fun part about this game, is that I never until I did it, I never really thought about it, and then when I was in this seminar, I was like, oh, that is weird. Anyway, that's the story of my name. Unadi here says that she was named by her aunt, and her name means progress. So that's good. That's cool. Who else would like to go? Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'm Yulia.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When my parents told me why they named Yulia many years ago, so I forgot that was an international thing. But I think they named Yulia because they wanted me to be a people.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think they gave it.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, interesting. Well, it's nice to have you here, Yola. Who else would like to go? Daniel, you want to go? We'll just work our way this way.
Technical name is Omri.
Mm-hmm.
And don't give me the name because already feels with me. And she was surprised by our friend with a lot of money and
Okay.
so that was giving me.
I see. And so it's Olabode? Is that a common name in Nigeria, or not that common? No. Do you like having a slightly uncommon name, or would you prefer to have a more common name?
I prefer more common name. I don't really like being. I don't like something that gives me too much attention.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I get that. I think I was the opposite because Michael's less common now, but when I was younger, I think it was the most popular name in the U.S. and Canada, and so in every class I was in as a child, there was always another Michael, at least one, and so it was kind of, yeah, it didn't really feel in some ways it didn't really feel like my name at all, because it was so common and so generic. There's so many Mikes, but it's not as common as it used to be. But I don't know. But yeah, it's nice. It doesn't draw attention to itself. It's a very, yeah, I get that though. But it's nice to have you here, Daniel. Who would like to go next? Okay. Okay, and sorry, what was your name again? Say it one more time. Oh, okay, Yokuri? Okay. I'm just... all right. Gotcha. Very nice to meet you. Glad you're here. Who's next? Okay. Okay. And call you what? Oh, Jen? Yeah, okay, Jen. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Nice to meet you. I'm sure your parents liked it, so, or thought it would fit or suit you, right? Yeah, okay. And? Sorry? Yeah. And Michelle, do you know the story of your... No? It's just something you have? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, it's nice to have you here, of course. I know you were in my class last term, but it's nice to have you physically here. Okay. So let me just see one thing here. Okay. So I'm glad we did that. I'm glad we kind of know each other a little bit. Like I said for my social justice class earlier today, I don't like to do too much on the first day because people are still figuring out their classes and getting access and things like that. So if this was a normal class, I'd probably give you about a 10-minute break right now, and then we'd come back and do a little more. Today I will just let you go a little bit early, and then we'll kind of start full into it tomorrow. But before we go, does anyone have any questions that they would like to have answered right now? Nuh-uh. Okay. Well, seeing none, I will end it there. You guys can pack it up. I hope you have a good rest of the afternoon. I'll see you tomorrow, and we will do some history, okay? All right. See you online, people. See you tomorrow, okay?